Alright folks, as promised, this video is about Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. Now, the Ehlers Danlos syndromes are a collection of 13 different genetically inherited conditions that affect the body's ability to produce the connective tissues that kind of hold everything together, like your ligaments and tendons and things like that, but also the tissue that connects your organs together as well. It's a deficiency in the body's ability to produce certain proteins, usually collagen, and collagen makes up around 25 to 30% of our total body mass apparently, so it can affect you in a lot of different ways. As I mentioned, it's a genetically inherited condition. One of my aunts has got it and her daughter, one of my cousins. That means we probably inherited it from an ancestor before us. My great nan on my mum's side was in a wheelchair from quite a young age, always had problems with one of her hips. I think probably we inherited it from her, but obviously they didn't have EDS or in the DSM or in the ICD diagnostic manuals back then. And she was adopted before formal adoption actually existed, so no way to trace the ancestry on that side. If you're wondering how many people are affected by Ehlers Danlos syndrome, it is apparently 1 in 5,000 people, but I'm not sure about that. I think maybe it must be underdiagnosed, because I've met, or not even underdiagnosed, but that must just be a really low estimate, because I've met 5 people with EDS just by chance, not related to me, not at EDS events, just completely by chance, met other people who claim to have been diagnosed with EDS. And so if it only affects 1 in 5,000 people, surely I would have had to have met like 5,000 people, is that right? I don't think I've met 5,000 people. Maybe I have. I don't think so. Some of the symptoms of EDS include digestion problems, problems with your organs, problems with your eyes, subluxations, which is like partial joint dislocations, chronic pain, poor proprioception, poor awareness of where your limbs are in space. I'm constantly dropping food, spilling drinks, going to open a door and then accidentally like kicking the door back into my face, kicking it closed back into my face just because I'm not really aware of where my limbs are around me. So how can you be So how can you have EDS and be autistic? Surely lightning doesn't strike twice. Well, no, it doesn't, but the results of lightning striking can be multiple. Like lightning could strike and it hits a tree and the tree falls down, but there was a bird nest in that tree and now all the birds are homeless. And also the tree fell on a shed and now a gardener can't get his tools out of the shed. So the tree fell down and he can't fix it. Yeah, I don't know, you see where I'm going with that though. Like, I've only got one set of genes, obviously, so it's only like, my genes are only different once, but that can have multiple different outcomes. So yeah, you can have EDS and be autistic. There does seem to be some coincidence, comorbidity, no, that sounds morbid. Coincident? You can have EDS and be autistic. That's basically what I'm trying to get at. Not that uncommon. I've read somewhere that some people are saying that EDS might also be a spectrum condition, like the hypermobility might also be part of a spectrum, and that spectrum might not be a different spectrum to the autism spectrum. It might actually be the same spectrum. So now I'm going to answer some of your questions. Michael asks, can one be double jointed in thumbs and big toes? My mother and I are that way, not other places unlike others. Yes, Michael, it is possible to be double jointed in your thumbs and big toes. I mean, if I'm going to be literal, which I usually am, double jointed that's not really, I'm sure Michael already knows this, but just in case anybody doesn't know, when we say double jointed, we don't mean that someone's got 2 joints, and we don't mean that the joint can move in 2 directions rather than 1 or anything like that. It's just a term of phrase to mean hypermobility. So yeah, it is possible to have hypermobility in your toes and thumbs. I've got a thumb that does this business like that, you see. So when I try and play guitar, I can't play guitar like other people do. I can't play bar chords because that would require me to rest my thumb there, which I can't do because it's hypermobile. See? So when I go to play guitar, I can't play a bar chord like other people would because I can't get that purchase, the pinch there. So what I do instead is I play the bass note with my thumb. So if I was doing a G, I'd try and do a bar chord. I wouldn't do it like this. I'd do it like this. So a bar chord would be, oh that hurts, like that. Yeah, that's not working for me. I'll play it like that instead. Thumb comes around like that, do a kind of Wilco Johnson on it. So yeah, it is definitely possible to be double jointed in your thumbs and your big toes, but I don't think you would get a diagnosis of EDS for that, because when you go for a diagnosis, you have to go through these screening assessments, which is called, I think it's like the Baton scale and the Brighton criteria, which is quite confusing because those words are quite similar and yet quite different. So yeah, you would have to score high enough on those scales. You'd have to have more than just, you know, they wouldn't diagnose you with EDS hypermobility. They wouldn't diagnose you with EDS hypermobility just with those particular joints being hypermobile. You would have to be hypermobile in more places. But yes, it is possible to be hypermobile there, but that doesn't count as having a hypermobility syndrome, I think. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I think that's the case. Heather says, I'm curious if I have it. Is it even worth looking into? Consider that my doctor doesn't like me and nearly rolls her eyes anytime I come in, curious about anything without being nearly dead. Yeah, I can empathise with that, Heather. I understand that one. My doctor is very much like that. I remember one particular occasion I came in with my ankle had a subluxation, a partial joint dislocation in my ankle. And so there was like my foot had kind of rolled over and there was a massive lump of tissue underneath my ankle kind of protruding out. You could clearly see it under the skin. So I went to the doctor, showed him this lump in my ankle, and he said, okay, right, okay, I'm going to put your foot up here, right, okay. And I didn't show him where the lump was, I just got my foot out, there you go, have a look. Straight away he's prodding this lump, okay. And then I see as if like a light bulb has gone off in his head, and he goes, there's nothing there, Joe, I can't see a lump. Like, well, how did you know where to prod? No answer to that. Just went with, there's nothing there, there's no lump. Oh, okay. But you prodded it, you knew where to prod. It can't just be in my mind because you prodded it with your finger. So yeah, my doctor has told me on numerous occasions, I don't know why you keep on coming in, because you've got a chronic illness, there's no treatment for what you've got, there's nothing I can do. And then when I mention this to him, he'll say, I never said that. Okay. I mean, you see like what, hundreds of patients, tens of patients at least. I only see one doctor. Kind of feel like it's more memorable experience for me, Plus, autistic, so I do tend to remember the details of interactions like that. On another occasion, I'd heard about there being a pain management and rehabilitation programme available at Stanmore Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital. So I inquired about that. I was told that there would be EDS specialists that I could go and see, and my doctor refused to refer me 7 times, if I remember correctly, which I do. 7 times that he refused. On the 7th, he told me that there's no such thing as an EDS specialist. He doesn't know what I'm talking about, and there is no place at Stanmore for this pain management thing. And I was like, well, there is. Like, I've heard about it. Right, okay, so he looks into it. Oh, right, yeah, okay, that does exist. Like 7 times that you refused to refer me, and then only on the 7th time does he explain that, like, as far as he's concerned, these things don't even exist. He doesn't even believe me that an EDS specialist is a thing, or that there is a pain management program for people with EDS. So we googled it, and yeah, no, those things are available. Right, okay, so then I got my referral. So yeah, I understand that. With regards to whether it's worth looking into, It depends what you want out of it, really. If you were to get a diagnosis, what would be the goal for you? If the goal would be, you know, hopefully suddenly everyone would become really understanding and you wouldn't have to have a lengthy conversation. You know, this is kind of how I thought with my autistic spectrum condition diagnosis. I thought I wouldn't have to keep explaining to people that I can't process visual instructions very well. So if you give me an instruction and it's visual, you know, like turn 30 degrees this way and then go forward, not really painting the picture in my head. I thought, rather than taking ages to explain things like that, or, you know, communication difficulties, being misinterpreted or misinterpreting other people, I thought that I would be able to shorten the amount of time I spent explaining that by just saying that's because I'm autistic. No, that's not the case, because people just want to argue with you. And it's the same with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. People are just going to argue with you. They're not going to suddenly go, oh, okay, right, yeah, poor you, I'll do what I can to support you. For the most part, people are just going to try and argue it as if they're a doctor or as if they understand your experience, which they obviously don't. If your reason for seeking a diagnosis would be to try and get some kind of treatment, there is no treatment. Sorry to tell you, there is no treatment available. There are things like this pain management rehabilitation thing. I did go on that. That was a 3-week stay in hospital and I got nothing out of it, really. A couple of people that were in there with me that I still talk to, that's great, but being autistic, you know, like nurturing friendships, maintaining relationships, not exactly my strong point. Some of the tips that they gave me were things like pacing yourself, thinking about the boom and bust cycle. If you think about a graph going like that, you know, don't push yourself to the point that then you bust and you can't do anything, because then you stiffen up on the days that you can't do anything. So then you spend a few days resting until you've got the energy again, and then when you've got the energy again, then you suddenly go for another burst and you try and get as much done as you can before the pain sets in again. But then the pain sets in again because you've overdone it. So you're booming and you're busting. So what they said is to try, don't do that, pace yourself, maintain a steady level. So I think, you know, that was good advice, but pretty sort of intuitive, really. You know, the kind of thing that you figure out for yourself. You don't really need anyone to tell you. So yeah, I didn't get much out of that. So I mean, it's worth looking into if you want to understand yourself and you want to understand how to look after yourself. But obviously, if you haven't got a diagnosis, you shouldn't go then enrolling on things to help you with a problem that you might not have. That might not be safe. So I would say look into, you know, like self-care for people with EDS. If you think you might have it, try and follow those, but be aware that, you know, that might not be what you have. So take it with a pinch of salt, you know, do it and then give things a fair try, but go easy, you know, don't boom and bust on them. Just stay safe and, you know, be aware that you might have a different condition. Jade says, I think I may have it. I seem to have a lot of the symptoms, but I wouldn't pass any of the screening assessments because I'm nearly 30 and maybe entering into stiffness. Maybe discuss the progression into stiffness later in life and how you might get diagnosed if you can't pass the screening test. Well, that would be very difficult. I think probably the people doing the diagnosis would say if you can't pass the screening test, then you don't meet the diagnostic criteria, so you haven't got EDS. That's not my opinion, that's just what I think they would say. You do get stiffer in old age, but still, if you have hypermobile joints, you will still have issues with things becoming subluxed, the partial joint dislocations. So I would have thought that that would show up on the assessment screenings. It's possible that you might have one of the other types of EDS, the one that isn't the hypermobile type. You've just said here that you do have a lot of the symptoms, but you haven't mentioned which ones. So a bit difficult for me to answer that, really. Maybe you could be a bit more specific. You know, you do get stiffer in later life, but that doesn't stop my joints from having these partial dislocations. Yesterday my wrist subluxed, I couldn't play guitar, I couldn't chop my food, could barely even open a packet, let alone pour myself a cup of tea. You know, having to sort of like lift the kettle with, like that, and pour it like that. So yeah, I'd probably say the same to you as I did to Heather, that maybe the best thing to do would be to look into, you know, self-care hints and tips for people with EDS, look into the best ways that people with EDS can look after themselves, and then just try and see if those work for you, but while being careful, because, you know, you wouldn't like to prescribe somebody medicine for a different illness to the illness they've actually got. I don't want to say to you that you should go and take these self-care tips, this particular set of tips for caring for yourself, and then it turns out that that particular set of tips might not be right for you because you might have something different. And finally, Susanna wants to know how I managed to stay fabulous, how I managed to make it work. Well, I might have led the witness a little bit with that one, because when I posted on Facebook that I was going to do this video, I said maybe you'd like to ask me some questions, like you know, things to look out for in your kids. Maybe somebody could have asked that. They didn't, so I won't talk about that because we're kind of pushing it for time. Whether I think it's worth seeking a diagnosis, and also I said, you know, how you might also want to know how I stay fabulous. So I did lead the witness there a little bit with that one. I guess the answer to that is I kind of stopped comparing. I've stopped measuring my happiness by other people's standards, to be honest. I've kind of accepted that I'm not comparing my happiness to other people's happiness, or, you know, how fulfilling their lives are to mine. I'm comparing how fulfilling my life is today to how fulfilling my life was yesterday. If I was to hold myself to the same standards for, like, you know, general well-being and happiness, I think probably I'd get very depressed. It's a bit, you know, it's like a Buddhist thing. I'm not being like nihilistic, but just like a Buddhist thing, like set your expectations lower. You know, I've kind of done away with the expectation that somebody should be there for me to listen to me complain about the pain I'm in and how difficult it is to do the things that I want to do in life. You know, at first I kind of had the impression that, like, well, then I need someone to talk to and I should be entitled to that. Now I've kind of realised that other people don't really want to hear it, to be honest, and I don't really want to hear it when other people complain to me. You know, it's all relative, and other people, you know, oh, I've got a headache, right? Well, do you know what I mean? A headache is one of the 75,000 symptoms that I'm experiencing right now, so I haven't really got much sympathy for your headache, sorry. And it's the same if I complain about, oh, my knee's hurting today because it's sublux because of my Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. Other people are just thinking, well, I don't really want to hear about your Ehlers Danlos Syndrome because, you know, my cat's got a sore face from having tried to eat a stinging nettle, or I don't know, my rent payments are due and I can't afford it. You know, it's all relative, isn't it? People have got their own stuff going on. They don't really want to hear about what you've got going on. So, yeah. Self-care with regards to just like lower expectations, really, which sounds sad, but it isn't. Like I say, it's a, you know, more like a Buddhist mentality of just like, don't expect so much, and then whatever support you do get from other people, you'll be more grateful for. I think that's a good approach, really. I think it's important to you know, not push yourself. As I said, you don't want to get into that boom and bust cycle that happens when you push yourself. You do want to pace yourself and maintain a kind of paced output of energy. But it is important to, you know, like today I don't feel very well. I don't really want to be doing this. I haven't spoken to another human being with my mouth today, I don't think. I did briefly on the phone. You know, I'm doing this because it's important for me to make sure that I'm speaking with my mouth every day. Because if I don't, I get to this point where, you know, like you probably heard me flubbing my words a little bit today. So it's, you know, not pushing yourself, but a little bit, you know, push yourself to do things that you don't want to do sometimes if it's not going to damage your health too much. I think it's important to give yourself things to look forward to as well. If you can try and make friends and arrange to go and do things with them. Obviously, you know, there are times when you might get a concert ticket and then your hip's dislocated and you can't go to the concert and you've lost your £30. Well, you know, you win some, you lose some. You still got the excitement of looking forward to it. You know, even if the thing actually is cancelled or your hip's dislocated and you can't go, still give yourself things to look forward to. You know, you can't rely on it always going right. It probably isn't always going to go right. In fact, it definitely isn't always going to go right. It is sometimes going to go wrong. There'll be times when you can't go, but you know, try. Give yourself things to look forward to. Do arrange things. What else? What else? How else do I stay fabulous? It's important, I think, to try and maintain a certain standard of like how you look. You know, like this is my scruffiest clothes that I wear. A smart jumper, smart blazer, hat. I've got jeans on, and today I've just got a, not a t-shirt, but a shirty kind of thing with no collar, casual shirt underneath there. If I am wearing a smart shirt, then I'll wear like an undershirt, a sweat shield undershirt that's got all padding in it, so that you know, it's not too hot, nice and cool, but then you don't get the sweat marks on your smart shirts. You can. Previously, I could only wear smart shirts if they were like really baggy and dark colours to hide the sweat patches, and now I can wear light shirts again. So, you know, it's important to do that. Find ways to make yourself feel like, yeah, you know, I'm looking dapper today. I'm feeling all right. I'm feeling suave. Okay, well, I'm not really sure what quality of footage I've got there for this video. As I say, I don't feel very well. I've got these lights on my face, so I can't really see what's going on. Yeah, so that'll be the end of this video. I'll wrap that one up there. Thank you very much for watching. Like it, subscribe. I'll probably put this one on Facebook and YouTube, so, you know, depending on where you are, like it, subscribe. Leave a comment. If you've got any questions, definitely leave a comment. I would like to respond to that. And I will see you next Friday for another video, if I'm feeling up to it. Hopefully I will be. Hopefully I'll get this feeling shite out of the way today, and by next week I'll be alright. Anyway, I'm rambling now. No, you hang up. You hang up. No, you hang up. Alright, bye.